There once was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. You would think that's the start of a great, inspiring story. But if you do know the book of Job, if you do know the story, you know what Job went through. You know what happened to him, you know what he lost, but then at the end you know what he gained. Let's talk about it.
You were given talents. What did you do with them? Did your gifts grow? Or did you place them in a hole? Increase, multiply, occupy till you come. That's the goal of the talent and serving. That's the goal of the talent and serving. That's the goal of the talent and serving. That's the goal of the talent and serving.
I just read Job chapter 1, verse 1. Let's read verses 2 and 3. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. Now think about this. What if that was you? You've done whatever you did up to this point in your life to get to where you are. You're serving God, you fear Him, you're keeping every law that He said to keep. And because of that, He's allowed you to prosper. So you're just going about your day-to-day business. You're comfortable. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, all is well in your world. Now let's look at what's happening in the spiritual realm, starting with verse 6. One day, the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, "I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on." Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil." Satan replied to the Lord, "Yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look at how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." "All right, you may test him," the Lord says to Satan. "Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but do not harm him physically." So Satan left the Lord's presence. Meanwhile, back on earth, Job, now put yourself into his shoes. Job is minding his own business, going about his day-to-day duties, doing whatever it was he was doing. And then one of his servants comes up to him. So let's start with verse 13. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting at the older brother's house, a messenger arrived at Job's home with the news, "Your oxen were plowing with the donkeys feeding beside them when the Sabeans raided us. They stole all the animals and killed all the farmhands. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news. "The fire of God has fallen from heaven and burned up your sheep and all the shepherds. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." And while he was speaking, a third messenger arrived with this news. 3 bands of Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels, killed your servants. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with the news. "Your sons and daughters were feasting in their oldest brother's home. Suddenly, a powerful wind swept in from the wilderness and hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed, and all your children are dead. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." So imagine this. You are blameless before God. God said you were the best man in all of the earth. You didn't know that, but you knew that you were doing what was right in His eyes. Then all of a sudden, back to back, you get 4 messengers coming at you with bad news. Now remember what verses 2 and 3 said. Job had 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and many servants. And within a span of a few minutes, all of that is gone. That's his family gone, all of his wealth gone. From an earthly standpoint, he's lost everything. And without you knowing, all of this happened because God bragged about you and was willing to let Satan test you. So think about this. You, if you were Job, are without a doubt a man of God, best on earth. You were given a test without you knowing that was substantial enough to see if you would curse God. You were given a test substantial enough to see if you would curse God. You're the best of the best. Do you think God's going to test you with something small? I never thought about it that way. We know that God doesn't give us anything that we can't bear. But imagine being on this mountaintop and within 5 minutes, you're in the valley trying to figure out how you got there. When I put myself into his shoes, I think this is an impossible situation. What just happened? Now, let's go to Job chapter 2, starting with verse 1. One day, the members of the heavenly court came again to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser Satan came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I've been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. So let's stop right there. Doesn't that remind you of something? Every time God asked him what he was doing, he replied with the same thing. I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. So let me just remind you of this verse in the New Testament. It's from 1 Peter 5 and 8. Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Verse 3. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil, and he has maintained his integrity, even though you urged me to harm him without cause. So, Job passed the first test. Satan lost. God, of course, is always right. This is my best servant on earth at that time. This is one of the finest men in all the earth. So, of course, Satan is not going to let that stand. So, verse 4 said, Satan replied to the Lord, skin for skin. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health. He will surely curse you to your face. All right. Do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So Satan left the Lord's presence, and he struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. So let's stop right there. Out of curiosity, I wanted to know exactly what this meant for Job. What exactly does having boils from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet look like? This is what I found. It's painful, it's inflamed, they're ulcerating skin sores, which means they swell, they are easily infected, they're full of pus, they burst open, they crust over. So another way of looking at this is it's a deep systemic skin disease. So if that wasn't enough, let's just think about this a bit more. Can you imagine being covered all over with sores that burst open and pus comes pouring out? Not just one boil, but everywhere, from head to toe. So imagine those boils on your face burst open, and all this pus is running down your face, gets into your eyes, is covering up everything, is flowing into your mouth when you speak. I can't imagine. I really don't want to imagine. But since I'm putting myself into his shoes and thinking about what he went through, I had to go and look. I had to go and find out what exactly having boils all over meant. Job 2 verse 8 says, Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. Why was he using a piece of broken pottery? He was using it to scrape all the pus and anything else off of him. Just imagine you're sitting there all day, just scraping. Boils burst open, they crust over, and what happens? More boils come up to take his place. Now think about this. Job chapter 7 verse 5 says, "My body is covered with maggots and scabs. My skin breaks open, oozing with pus." Can you imagine? You're already dealing with boils. You're dealing with all the pus that you're covered with. You end up being covered with maggots. And those boils that burst open are scabbing over. Your skin is broken and festering. Now look at Job chapter 30, verse 17. "At night my bones are filled with pain, which gnaws at me relentlessly." And then verse 30 says, "My skin has turned dark, and my bones burned with fever." So your bones are aching. You've got no release. Your skin is blackening and is peeling. So all these things are happening to Job at the same time. He went from living his life to getting 4 messengers that said, "You've lost everything." So now think about if that was you. You're in constant pain. It's nonstop. You're covered in infection. And anyone looking at you, you can see that you're visibly disfigured. And imagine the humiliation of it all. So you went from being who you once were to now being in social isolation. That is extreme physical suffering. There's a total loss of health, wealth, reputation, and all of this was done simply to test his faith. If you go back and look at Job chapter 2, verse 8, even his wife told him, "You should curse God and die." But he never sinned by blaming God. He never sinned by cursing God. So in Job chapter 2, it says that 3 of his friends visited him to comfort and console him. When they saw him from a distance, they could scarcely recognize him. And in chapter 3, though Job never sinned, he did have things to say. First, in Job chapter 3, verse 1, it says, "At last Job spoke, and he cursed the day of his birth." He cursed the day he was born, but he never cursed God. Now, the majority of the book of Job, from chapters 3 to chapters 37, is simply him sitting with his friends and discussing what's going on in Job's life. His friends were saying, "This all happened because somehow you sinned, and your sin must have been big because of what you've lost and what you're going through." But Job continued to tell him he was innocent. Job constantly questions God's judgment and even questions God's fairness, but he never cursed God. In chapter 6, verse 24, he says, "Teach me, and I will keep quiet. Show me what I've done wrong." He's simply asking God to justify what he's done to deserve such punishment. And he also, in chapter 10, pleads his case to God. In verse 3, he says, "What do you gain by oppressing me? Why do you reject me, the work of my own hands, while smiling on the schemes of the wicked?" Again, he's questioning God's judgment. In chapter 13, verse 3, it says, "As for me, I would speak directly to the Almighty. I want to argue my case with God himself." In chapters 38 to 41, God finally speaks. Job finally gets his answers. Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind, "Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Brace yourself like a man, because I've got some questions for you, and you must answer them. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined its dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? Who supports its foundation, and who laid its cornerstone, as the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? Who kept the sea inside its boundaries as it burst from the womb, and as I clothed it with clouds and wrapped it in thick darkness?" Literally, all of chapter 38 is God asking Job these questions. And he's doing this simply to say, who are you to question me? I'm going to do what I'm going to do. In chapter 40, verse 1, "Then the Lord said to Job, do you still want to argue with the Almighty? You are God's critic, but you don't have the answers." Now Job is finally coming to his senses. In verse 4, he says, "I am nothing. How could I ever find the answers? I will cover my mouth with my hand. I have said too much already. I have nothing else to say." So you would think that would be the end of the conversation. But again, verse 6, God starts up again. Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind, brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you, and you must answer them. Will you discredit my justice and condemn me just to prove you're right? Are you as strong as God? Can you thunder with a voice like his? All right, put on your glory and splendor, your honor and your majesty. Give vent to your anger. Let it overflow against the proud. Humiliate the proud with a glance. Walk on the wicked where they stand. Bury them in the dust. Imprison them in the world of the dead. Then even I would praise you, for your own strength would save you. Verse 11 says, who has given me anything that I need to pay back? Everything under heaven is mine. And in chapter 42, verse 1, then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do anything and no one can stop you. You ask, who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorance? It is I, and I was talking about things I knew nothing about, things far too wonderful for me. You said, listen and I will speak. I have some questions for you and you must answer them. I had only heard about you before, but now I see you with my own eyes. I take back everything I said and I sit in dust and ashes to show my repentance. So Job went through all these things. He didn't know why all this tragedy happened to him. He didn't know he was being tested. His friends are blaming him, saying he did something so heinous that he deserved everything he got. And when God finally speaks, he doesn't say, Job, I'm happy with you. I hold you in high regard. Instead, God says, who are you to question me? And it's like God put out his resume and was just saying everything he's done. All the great and mighty things he's done. Not everything he's done, but just a few of the things that he can do and is still doing, and they are the most impossible of things. Finally, Job understands. God, I'm sorry. I have no answers for you. None at all. But I repent, and I'll just sit here and lament. Now let's go down to verse 10 of chapter 42. The Lord restored his fortunes. In fact, the Lord gave him twice as much as before. Then all of his brothers, sisters, and former friends came and feasted with him in his home, and they consoled him and comforted him because of all the trials the Lord had brought against him. And each one of them brought him a gift of money and a gold ring. So the Lord blessed Job in the second half of his life even more than in the beginning. For now he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 teams of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He also gave Job 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. Verse 15, in all the land, no women were as lovely as the daughters of Job. Job lived 140 years after that, living to see 4 generations of his children and grandchildren. Then he died, an old man who had lived a long, full life. In the end, we see Job did question God, but he never blamed God. He never cursed God. He never abandoned God. Even everything he said was still directed to God, and he was hoping that God would give him an answer. So he struggled with his faith. He did not struggle with any unbelief. So when I think about this again, just putting myself into Job's shoes, I've got to ask myself, would I have kept my faith if that happened to me? I would ask you to consider, what would I do if that happened to me? Do I know that God will continue to supply my every need, even though I don't know what's really going on or why things are happening? This is simply food for thought, and I hope that you continue to think about Job and what he did and what in the end he gained. This has been the Talented Servant Podcast.